Self-defense, jiu-jitsu versus boxing. This guy's got a WBC belt over here and some YouTube plaques, so he's got a lot of viewers, and apparently boxes. We're just gonna assume I know which way he's leaning on this one.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus boxing. Which one of these two martial arts is the best for you to learn for self-defense? A lot of boxers will be seeing boxing all day long. A lot of the Jiu-Jitsu community will be seeing Jiu-Jitsu all day long. Now in this video, I'm going to be giving you the pros and cons of both boxing and Jiu-Jitsu if you're ever in a street fight situation. Now at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you which one I recommend you train and which ones I've got my kids training right now and why.
I hope
and
his
think
kids are
it will
boxing.
surprise you when I tell you. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Tony Jeffries. I'm an Olympic medalist boxer, former undefeated professional, European gold medalist, 7-time national champion. Let's get into it. Now from my intro, you know that I've got a ton of boxing experience. I had 106 fights in my career. I started boxing in 1995. So when it comes to boxing, I know what I'm talking about. Now Jiu-Jitsu on the other hand, I've got very little experience. I've been doing it for the last 3 months. But I've been very consistent doing it 1, sometimes 2 times a day. And with Jiu-Jitsu, I've been doing a lot of sparring. But again, I'm still a no-stripe white belt and very new to it. Now, before I talk about the pros and cons of both, I just want to say, if you've got any experience in boxing or in Jiu-Jitsu, I would say you're 10 times more likely to have success if you ever do get into an altercation outside. Even if the guy's bigger than you, if you've got some experience, it's way, way better than having 0 experience. But even with different training methods, a lot of the times if you do get into a street fight, that goes out of the window. Not unless when you have been doing your boxing training or jiu-jitsu training, you're in these stressful situations. Like when I train, we spar hard all the time. So I'm used to being in these uncomfortable situations. So I know that is going to really help me if I ever do get into a street fight. The same with boxing. Because I've been in these stressful situations, everything won't go out the window. It'll come down to the instinct of, being in them situations that will help me if I ever do get into an altercation. The cons of jiu-jitsu in a street fight is if someone knows how to punch, you don't work on defending punches in jiu-jitsu, and you're likely to get hit with that. I think
it depends.
If you're not on your game and you're going to go for the takedown straight away. As well,
do you train striking in jiu-jitsu? Do you do self-defense jiu-jitsu? Like that's one of the things I've always told people is the cool thing about jiu-jitsu is typically Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, especially, when I started jiu-jitsu, is we started it kind of with that MMA, that self-defense in mind. So like jiu-jitsu guys were training to fight other martial arts. When you're a boxer, you're thinking about boxing. You're learning to box other boxers. When you're a kickboxer, you're learning to kickbox kickboxers. Karate guys fight karate guys, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas jiu-jitsu, typically the self-defense portion of jiu-jitsu, you're learning to take the fight to the ground. So you're learning to duck, to close the distance, to manage the distance against a boxer or a karate guy or a kickboxer. It doesn't really matter what it is. So he is kind of right, as far as jiu-jitsu. You tend to train for jiu-jitsu, but outside of that, I don't think I've ever seen a boxer in a boxing gym training to fight a wrestler or any other martial art training to fight outside of their own martial art.
You kind of often need something to grip onto. Now in street fights, a lot of time people will not be wearing a big jacket or obviously not wearing a gi for you to be able to grip onto to get them chokes in. And now I guess another con with jiu-jitsu is because you're not getting punched in the face, you don't know what it's going to be like to get punched in the face. So when you do get punched in the face, you're going to get a big shock. And that right there can...
He kind of skimmed over the whole clothing thing. I wear clothes almost every time I'm outside. Especially like I live here in Indiana, it's cold a lot. Like I'm wearing a coat today. Whether you have a big coat on or not, like you can choke somebody with a t-shirt. And also there's a lot of no-gi chokes. I kind of like how he just kind of like skimmed right over that. Like, oh, you need clothes to do jiu-jitsu. Definitely you can do jiu-jitsu without the clothes on. But also if you're fighting someone naked, you probably made a lot of mistakes long before that altercation.
Can be the difference between winning and losing. Now the goal is not to get punched in the face at all, but if it ever does happen, you kind of know what to expect with boxing, where jiu-jitsu you don't. Another con of just doing jiu-jitsu other than boxing is to have success in the street fight, you've got to take someone to the ground. Now in actual jiu-jitsu, you're not used to punches coming at you.
I'm actually going to stop that right there. So to win fight in jiu-jitsu, you have to take the fight to the ground. Technically, yes, but also no. I can break a guy's arm standing. I can choke a person out standing. The great thing about jiu-jitsu as far as a street fight goes is I can, number one, manage my distance, but also I can put put my opponent between me and somebody else, or I can use a wall, I can use a fence, I can use a car to assist in those takedowns. So I can use what's around me. I can throw a guy and end the fight with a throw. Like, I don't have to follow him to the ground. But also we get in this habit of like thinking like, oh, when we're in jiu-jitsu, we're rolling around on the ground for 5 or 10 minutes, and I don't have that option in a street fight. In a street fight, in a self-defense scenario, like, unless I'm fighting a good high-level jiu-jitsu guy, man, that guy's going to last about 7 seconds. Like, legitimately. Like, there's going to be a takedown and a choke, and an untrained person has no ability to defend that. Now, me personally, like, I've kickboxed and boxed and everything. I don't hit very hard. So, like, it's going to take me a lot longer, a lot more strikes, a lot more time and damage to my hands to knock somebody out. So I would rather just get into a position, choke a person out, and walk away.
So if you're trying to take someone to the ground while they're punching you in the head, you're going to get hurt. So now,
if you're trying to take someone to the ground while they're trying to punch you in the head, you're going to get hurt. That argument is 70 years old, at least. I think like the early jiu-jitsu guys proved that wasn't the case. I mean, like, as early on as Hoist Gracie versus Art Jemerson, right? We have a jiu-jitsu guy who was doing almost no striking versus a very good boxer, and the fight went to the ground within seconds. He was mounted on him within seconds. Yeah, I'm going to evade the strikes. Maybe at worst, I'm going to take one getting to the clinch. Again, we're talking strictly boxing, or strictly not even jiu-jitsu versus boxing in this scenario. In these scenarios, we're talking a jiu-jitsu guy versus a street fighter, somebody that probably doesn't have skill in boxing. So the likelihood of untrained person landing a punch on a trained person who's trying to get them to the ground is very low.
Pros of jiu-jitsu in a street fight. If your fight ever gets up close like this, a boxer doesn't really know what to do, because you're not really going to be pulling arms down and whipping in their body shots like you would do in a fight. But with jiu-jitsu, if you get close like this, they know straight away what they're going to do, how they're going to take you to the floor and control you and put you in a position what's very uncomfortable, that can put you to sleep. And if you think...
Yeah, so he makes a good point here, right? Like, the jiu-jitsu guys know what's going on when they get into that clinch. And just to look at that, even from a trained boxing perspective, when boxers clinch and you see it happen probably every round of every boxing match, the referee steps in and stops them. So in a striking scenario, what you find is one guy is always the better striker. He lands a great punch, and just naturally, instinctively, we tend to clinch. Okay, so even if you don't want to clinch and you get hit real hard, you're going to grab somebody. Okay, that's just our natural instinct. So why not just go with that? Just do jiu-jitsu. But you should box. I'm good with both. But
think about it, a lot of fights do end up very close like this, where you're on top of each other if you don't land that first punch. Another big pro of jiu-jitsu is size really doesn't matter. If you've seen UFC 1, and I might be wrong saying this, but I think this is where jiu-jitsu got introduced to the American market, where there was Hoist Gracie fighting some big monsters, fighting boxers, wrestlers, kickboxers, and he had a gi on, and he went in there and he destroyed them all. And back then, UFC 1 was kind of like a street fighting situation. So you can see, smaller guy can beat the big guy all day long in jiu-jitsu. And for me personally, who was like 6'1" and 190 pounds, when I went into jiu-jitsu and I started working with these guys with a little bit more experience than me, who was like 150 pounds and 5'8" tall, they were absolutely destroying me. I couldn't hold me home with them. I still can't, because they've got that experience to know exactly how to handle a bigger guy. As well with...
Yeah, obviously size matters when skill is equal. And it's always going to matter, size and strength, but definitely the jiu-jitsu leverage and technique can overcome a lot of that.
Jiu-jitsu, you're getting comfortable with people hanging on your back with the arms around your neck, learning how to get out of that. So if someone does come from behind and gets you in a choke with jiu-jitsu, you kind of know how to deal with that and the best practices to do to get out of these situations.
I actually really like that point he made. And I do like that he's training jiu-jitsu, right? And he's showing himself getting beat at jiu-jitsu. But oftentimes our altercations aren't just somebody coming up, throwing a punch, throwing a big haymaker at us. It's somebody grabbing us, throwing us in a headlock or something. And you can't really box your way out of that, right? You have to wrestle or grapple your way out of that. So I like that point he made.
Another pro in jiu-jitsu has been in them stressful situations. Now let's just say if you do end up on the floor and someone is on top of you, you know how to control it. You know how to control your breathing. Like compare that to a boxer, wouldn't know how to control the breathing if someone is on top of them. Where in jiu-jitsu, you know exactly how to control your breathing.
Cool. And beyond the breathing, just beyond, staying calm when somebody's on top of you, I actually always use the scenario of, like, again, I live in Indiana. There's literally snow on the ground right now and ice. What if you're outside and you get in an altercation, you slip and fall? I joke that that's the only time somebody's going to mount me in a street fight, but it could happen, right? I could slip, fall, and just all of a sudden somebody's on top of me, and now I have to defend myself, right? So being a jiu-jitsu black belt, like I'm familiar with that position. I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to escape immediately and turn the altercation in my favor. But somebody who's a boxer obviously isn't familiar with that position and doesn't know what to do from there.
And stay calm in these stressful situations. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of boxing for a street fight. Starting with the cons, a street fight gets close, like I mentioned with the jiu-jitsu, or you end up on the floor. It's hard to really know what to do. When I started doing the jiu-jitsu, that was one of the most uncomfortablest parts for me, is being close to another human being where they're wrestling with you and pulling you around, and you don't know what to do in these situations. You kind of panic, hold your breath, try and push off, and you get tired really fast. So,
yeah, and we can go back to that very first UFC fight, UFC 1 with Royce Gracie and Art Jimerson. Royce actually never submitted him necessarily, didn't get him in a choke or an arm lock, leg lock, nothing. Royce was mounted on him, and Jimerson didn't know what to do and tapped out. I think Royce then grabbed his hand, punched him a few more times, and then he tapped again. But yeah, like it just showed, like, a high-level boxer had no concept of what to do when they were on the ground, and so he just gave up.
Not knowing what to do when someone is very close to you is definitely a con for boxing in a street fight. Another con, you might think it's a pro, but I want to say it's a con, is with boxing in a street fight, we can throw that one punch and you can knock someone out like that, but the damage that you can do to them, comparing that to jiu-jitsu where you can control the damage, in a street fight with a punch, that one punch, you could end someone's life. They could fall, bang their head on the floor, and it could be over. Yes.
Man, I'm glad he brought up that point. I've actually made that point several times. And there's been scenarios where guys have not even trained boxers, but guys who have punched people and they've fallen and hitting their head on a counter or cash register, or even just hitting their head on the floor and being severely injured or even dead. And then you have, number one, you've killed somebody, but then you have, legal issues and jail time and all of that. Whereas jiu-jitsu, I can very easily control the damage. I can literally just pin somebody until they calm down, until the cops get there. I can choke them unconscious and subdue them, and then just walk away when they're unconscious. If I have to, I can break somebody's arm, and probably that's going to end the fight. If not, they've only got one good arm now. If I break somebody's leg, they can't follow me, right? I can walk away. But ultimately with jiu-jitsu, I can control the amount of damage I have to inflict on somebody, whereas boxing or any other striking art, like, my only option is impact, is punching, kicking, elbowing, headbutting. Like, I'm causing them damage. I'm potentially even, knocking someone unconscious, potentially killing somebody if they hit their head on the floor or something. So I actually really like that he brought up that point also.
Yes, I get you can end the fight fast, which is also one of the pros I'm going to talk about in a second, but as well, that can be a con because that's all we know. Then another huge con leading off from that is if we get took to the floor and we're on the ground and someone is on top of us, again, we've got no idea what we're going to do. We've got no idea how to hip escape and get on top and control them and put them in a position where they're uncomfortable and they've got to submit to tap. I guess you wouldn't tap in a street fight, you would just get put to sleep and then control the person there. We don't know any of that stuff in boxing. Now moving on to the pros of boxing, like I've mentioned, you can end a fight like that. It's going to be over within a second. I remember seeing a video of a boxer, I think he was an Eastern European, walking through the street with his missus and some guy starting him, and he chins like 3 or 4 guys.
I love this video.
Those boxes.
Man, he pieces these guys apart. It's great.
One good punch and it's game over. Another.
One of my old jiu-jitsu / Muay Thai coaches, Scott Sullivan, actually, I believe his dad actually owned a bar, so he did some bouncing there. He has a story about him and his father escorting like 4 guys out, and there was one guy kind of turned, attacked his dad, and they fell over a railing, and Scott like, boom, 1 punch, knockout, boom, 1 punch, knockout, grabbed the 3rd guy, choked him unconscious. So absolutely, we can, a skilled boxer. Also, Scott was a heavyweight Muay Thai champion. So guys that have that 1 punch knockout power, yeah, you can end a fight very quickly. Again, I'm small framed. I don't have that kind of knockout power, but that goes right back to what we talked about, where like I hit somebody, knock them out, they hit their head on concrete or something. It could be much worse than just me punching them. Like my punch might not have been the killing blow, right? It's what they hit their head on after the punch. But yes.
The big pro for boxers is defense of punches. Someone's going to throw a punch at us. We know how to move out the way, how to slip, how to lean back, how to move our feet and get out the way, and then come back with counter punches as well. Because 9 times out of 10, 19 times out of 20, in a street fight, someone's going to throw a punch. Now,
9 times out of 10, 19 times out of 20, a trained boxer is going to beat an untrained street fighter, without question. But there's always a lucky punch. And as horrible as that sounds, like, you can have a guy just doesn't know what he's doing, eyes closed, and he lands something that's untechnical, not something that you would ever see come from somebody trained, and it happens to land, and it's lights out, or you're cut and you're bleeding in your own eyes and you can't see. So there's always a lucky punch. There's always a lucky punch. Even a trained fighter versus an untrained fighter. There's no such thing as lucky jiu-jitsu. So, and I appreciate this guy's like doing both and doing the pros and cons. But one thing I always tell people, first day they're in, there's no such thing as lucky jiu-jitsu. I have to know how to get to a position, I have to know how to maintain that position, and I have to know how to finish from that position. So, me personally, I always say there's always lucky punches, no lucky jiu-jitsu. So I'm not gonna sit and strike and try to knock somebody out in a self-defense scenario. If somebody gets a lucky punch on me, I'm unconscious. Man, that could be the end for me, So I want to take luck completely out of any kind of self-defense equation.
Because we've done boxing, we're used to punches coming at us, we can get out of the way of that punch and come back with a punch of our own. So as you see, there is lots of pros and cons of both jiu-jitsu and boxing. Now, which one do I think you should train if you want to really learn about self-defense? Well, I'm going to tell you that, but really quick, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video. It really gives me extra gear when I'm in there training. And what honor to do them for all my
Can we put an origin ad?
Let me know which one you think is better for self-defense in the comments below. Since I started doing jiu-jitsu here in Los Angeles with Bruno Valdivino, even though it's been a short period of time, I feel like it's really changed my life. And confidence is something that I don't really lack when it comes to fighting because of all my boxing experience. But this, it does give me that extra bit of confidence if I need it. But what should you start doing? Now, I highly recommend you do both. With boxing, you can kind of learn that yourself at home, on a bag, with a partner, on the mitt. With jiu-jitsu, I would
Man, this guy actually makes really good points. I really like this guy. Boxing's way easier to do by yourself. It's way easier to do. You can shadow box. You can hit a bag. Jiu-jitsu's kind of hard by yourself. There's single man drills. You can grab a grappling dummy. You can mess around with it. But ultimately, you need that biofeedback for jiu-jitsu. And yes, to be an effective boxer, you need to be moving with somebody. You need to be hitting mitts. You need to be sparring. But ultimately, to train and get the footwork down and make sure you're punching, that's way easier to do. It's way easier to train by yourself with boxing than jiu-jitsu is.
Recommend you go to a jiu-jitsu studio. They're everywhere these days, and try and do 50-50 of both. Let's say if you can only work out twice a week, I would do 1 day jiu-jitsu, 1 day of boxing. Really split it in half. And my 3 daughters are now doing jiu-jitsu, and I absolutely love it for them.
His 3 daughters are doing jiu-jitsu. So one thing I do like, and I'm not against females boxing by any means, but jiu-jitsu for women, generally men and women aren't fist fighting, right? It's either like a mugging where it's like, hey, there's my purse and my stuff, I'll cancel my credit cards later, or a sexual assault scenario where you are on the ground. As far as, like, I love that this guy's got his 3 daughters in jiu-jitsu. I think it's way more valuable, especially for females, than boxing, right? Like, women just typically are smaller than men. They're not as likely to be able to knock out a man, especially someone way bigger. So, but choking, arm locking, foot locking, like, definitely. And small kids too. Like, let's look at 2 points here. Your child is in school and he's getting bullied, or she's getting bullied, and they punch somebody in the face a whole bunch and bloody him up. Like, they're definitely going to get in trouble. I know when I was in school, I don't know the rules now because I was like 7,000 years ago. If you got in a fight, it was whatever, but if there was blood drawn, then it was like a huge deal, like, and then cops got involved. With jiu-jitsu, like, you can literally just pin somebody against a locker, you can control them standing, you can take them down, mount them, talk them out of it, like, just wait for a teacher or something. Not that you'll get in less trouble, I don't know, not a you know, school employee, but you know, it at least shows some control. It shows that it's less violent, at least in appearance.
As a parent, I do worry about my kids getting attacked. And if they get attacked from behind, with more experience with jiu-jitsu, they'll really know what to do. Yes, I'm teaching them some boxing as well, but the jiu-jitsu is, I think, going to be a game changer for them in their life.
Cool, yeah, overall, man, it was a really good video. I agreed with most of what he said, and had a little points I made in there, but I mean, train both. You know, obviously, I lean more toward the jiu-jitsu. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 1997, and even before that I had some Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo, but I've done boxing and Muay Thai as well, and like I like both. I do find that the jiu-jitsu is way easier as you start getting older. So yeah, ultimately great video. Guy made some really good points. Good stuff.